Welcome to the next edition of the Economic Archer podcast. Wanted to quickly go back and connect to the last video and kind of pick up where we left off. So we had talked about which is better, fiat currency, which is dollars backed by nothing but faith in your government, or money that's backed by gold or silver. And remember, we gave the example, if you took $100 in 1913 and looked at what it would buy then, today, to buy the same amount of goods, it would cost 29 times more. So $2,900 plus dollars to buy the same amount of goods that $100 would buy back in 1913. But if you took gold, and remember, back in 1913, 1 ounce of gold cost $20. That's how valuable our currency was. You could buy 5 ounces of gold for $100. Today, 1 ounce of gold, 1 ounce, cost $1,850 US. You can't even buy a tenth of an ounce of gold with $100 today, and you could buy 5 whole ounces back in 1971. And we also talked about the fact that we showed the charts, remember, that showed, actually I've got the chart right here. If you look at the chart, here's how much a dollar would buy in 1913, and you can see it's fallen drastically to get where we are now. 97% of the purchasing power is gone. Whereas gold, this is what it would buy in 1560. Remember, I told you, you don't have to just go back to 1913 with gold, because gold's been in existence for thousands of years and it's always had value. And actually, the value is always going up. But if you look, you can see that up until today, gold has increased in value, which means it will buy as much or more that it would buy back in 1560. The dollar's lost 97% of its purchasing power since 1913. So it's really not even a question. If you're choosing where to put your money based on what's going to maintain your buying power, it's clearly precious metals backed money, okay, versus fiat currency. So today we're going to talk about since we're not going to get a fiat currency today, a gold or silver backed currency today. So what can you do today to make it where you can maintain your buying power? Well, you can invest your money directly in gold or silver. And today we're going to talk about which is the better choice, gold or silver. And I'm going to start with saying there is no right or wrong answer. There's several factors you need to consider when choosing what's right for you. And it's probably going to be a combination of both. But I'm going to walk you through some of the things that you should think about to make the right choice for you. So the first thing I would say that you need to look at is your tolerance for risk. And when I say that, I say, better said, it's tolerance for volatility, for the prices to move. And the reason they move is largely just because of the currency that you're pricing it in. But regardless, if you own gold or silver, there's a clear difference on which one is more volatile, and that is silver is more volatile. When gold and silver go up, silver is going to go up a much higher percentage than does gold. But conversely, when gold and silver go down, silver is usually going to go down significantly more as a percentage than gold. So you need to know yourself, or if your tolerance for volatility is high, then you make one choice. If your tolerance is low, then you're going to probably make the other, which would be gold. Second thing, you need to look at the silver to gold ratio. There's a lot of people that have spoken on this, and they've looked historically. When the silver to gold ratio, meaning the number of ounces of silver that you could buy for the same amount of money as buying an ounce of gold, when that is below 40, so 40, you could buy, if you had some money, you could either buy, with the same amount of money, you could buy 40 ounces of silver, or you could buy 1 ounce of gold. Usually it's better to go ahead and buy gold. If on the other hand, the ratio is 75 or 80 to 1, so it takes you 75 or 80 ounces of silver, cost you the same amount of money as 1 ounce of gold, you should probably buy silver. So that's another thing to look at. And I don't want to get too complicated on that, because I realize for a lot of people, economic issues, you start getting in the weeds, it gets complicated and it gets confusing. So just keep it simple. If you're going to buy based on the silver to gold ratio, if it's less than 40, you might want to think about gold. If it's greater than 75 or 80 ounces of silver for 1 ounce of gold, you probably want to buy silver. Another factor is affordability. If you've got $100 to invest each week, you're not going to be able to buy gold, because this 1/10 ounce of gold costs $185 plus. So you're going to need to buy silver. So depending on how much you've got to invest, that's going to help you make your decision. The other thing is availability. So at any given time, depending on what you want, you got to check and see if it's available. Because there's been such high demand for gold and silver, some of the products aren't readily available at the given time you're going to buy them. So that's another factor. Another one is premiums. So if you know the basics of economics, we learn about supply and demand. If there's only one item available, so your supply is 1, and there's 10 people that want to buy it, think about what happens in the housing market. You'll end up with people bidding up the price. Same thing with gold or silver. If there's only 1 or 2 pieces available and there's a whole bunch of people that want it, it drives the price up, and you're going to see that typically in the premiums being charged. And it's not because the retailers are gouging you, it's because it costs them more to get it. Because if they're in sales, then they're not just focused on how much they sell today. They've got to replenish their supply and sell in the future. So that's what makes the reason to have premiums, okay? Another factor that you've got to consider. Storage capacity. So when you go to store, depends on how much you're going to invest. If you've got a little bit of money to invest, it's not going to be hard to store. To give you an example, this is 100 ounces of silver. It weighs about 6 pounds, and you can see it's about probably 6.5 inches long or so, and it's probably 2 inches wide. So it doesn't take up a ton of space. But if you were going to have $1 million worth of these, it would take up quite a bit of space. So that's another factor that you want to think of when you're investing. Another thing is barterability. Now, what do I mean by that? So let's say, I don't know if you've heard much about EMDs, but one of the war tactics that a country could use against us is to blow a bomb up in our atmosphere, which causes our electric grid to go down, which would create, you wouldn't have access to your money, because if you go to the ATM and the grid's down, it's not going to be able to give you money. If you are trying to go to the bank, well, if the computers and everything are down, they're not going to be able to give you your money. But if you have some of your money stored in gold or silver, you're still going to be able to get the goods that you need, because there's a lot of suppliers that would take silver or gold as payment. So barterability is important. And me personally, that's your first box you have to check. You need some, silver in ounces, or even some junk silver, which would be like silver dimes, pre-1965 dimes or quarters or half dollars. So another thing to think of, the last one I would say, is liquidity. So if you have your money stored and in gold or silver, and you need to lay your hands on some cash to buy something quickly, well, if you have silver, virtually anybody, like these are 4 pieces of silver, they would cost you roughly $28 each. So you're talking about a little bit over $100 right there. Virtually anybody could give you cash for that. But if you've got an ounce of gold, That's $1,850, and there's a lot of people that may not be able to make change for that, or may not, depending on what you're buying. If you're buying a loaf of bread, and you're giving them something worth $1,850, it's going to be hard to make that exchange. So those are the factors that you keep in. Now, I'm going to tell you quickly, I'm not a financial advisor, but I am going to tell you what I'm doing and why. For me, with the silver to gold ratio right now being about 84 ounces of silver to 1 ounce of gold, meaning if I'm going to invest X amount of money, I would be able to buy for the same price. 84 ounces of silver would equal the same price roughly as 1 ounce of gold. For me, I'm investing in silver right now. Silver at that ratio, even if you want to eventually own gold, by investing in silver now, when that ratio normalizes, and we'll talk about that on a future podcast, but many times, even in the last 100 years, you've seen the silver to gold ratio go down as low as 15 to 1. So if I buy silver today and the ratio is 84 to 1 and it drops to 15 to 1, I'm going to end up with a lot more gold than if I had bought gold up front. And like I said, we will dedicate an entire podcast to that ratio in the future. But for me right now, the vast majority of my investing is in silver because you just can't pass up that silver to gold ratio being 84 to 1. Again, every one of these first several videos builds on each other. So I'm gonna ask you, like and subscribe to it. Pull up the show notes, print them off if you need to. Get them to friends and family because every one of us is vested in this. As the dollar decreases in purchasing power, it's going to be more important that you're invested and the people you care about are invested in things that are going to maintain purchasing power. Thank you for joining us today. Look forward to seeing you on the next episode.